morning and welcome to this studio Offshore Energy. My name is Bob Meijer and I'll be the host of this webinar that is about the financing landscape and improvement of financing landscape for offshore wind and offshore wind innovations. In this webinar we will present a study that was performed by JBR on the initiative of Invest-NL and TKI Offshore Energy. And also following a lead that was given by Jan Vos of NedZero, who is also in this call. The requirements for this study was really born out of necessity for, say, improvements in the financing landscape. We have three guests today. There's Eliane Blomen of JBR, who will present the report. Jan Vos, I already mentioned, the chairman of NedZero, who will give his reflections on the report, and Eva Ferrier of Invest-NL. And she is also one of the commissioners of this study. So very much welcome to our participants and also to the audience. Please be aware that this webinar is being recorded. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to put them in the Q&A or the chat. We'll try to follow up on them within the call. But if that's not possible, we only have half an hour. We'll try to do that, say, offline following the webinar. So to start the event, I first like to ask Eva to give her, I would say, reasoning for why this study was so important. Eva, can you explain that to us?
Investments in the offshore winds are crucial to start off with achieving our climate goals, but also to maintain our competitive position. We as Invest-NL support innovative entrepreneurs by investing in them, and over the years, several have addressed their challenges when they are raising funding. So after discussing these challenges with you, Bob, but also with your colleague Martin Wijsblom, and also with Jan Vos and his team from NedZero, it became very clear that a comprehensive study is needed to understand the financial landscape, but also the challenges in the supply chain. And now today, with the report of JBR, we have the necessary insights and understanding.
Well, thank you for this introduction of the reason why we've initiated this research. And of course, now I'd very much like to hand over to Eliane to present the outcomes of the study. Eliane, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Bob. And perhaps you can share the slides. Great. So welcome everybody, and really nice to see that there are so many people tuning in. And I have about 10 minutes to present our study. It's called Improving Access to Finance for the Dutch Offshore Wind Supply Chain. So it was focused mostly on the Netherlands. And obviously, yes, it's offshore wind is an international market. But we did really want to focus first on the landscape in the Netherlands. So maybe you can click through to the next slide. So as we can see here, there are ambitious targets for offshore wind. In the graph shows the offshore wind ambitions in the North and the Celtic Seas for the year 2030. So the blue bars are the current installed capacities, and the orange ones are the ambitions for 2030. Well, we all know that the ambitions are really high, and that there are a lot of gigawatts that need to be built in the coming years in order to reach the targets. And as we can see, the Dutch offshore wind ambitions are at risk without sufficient scaling up and innovation of the whole supply chain. And that was basically the start of our research. So if we go to the next slide, the main research question that we had was, do Dutch entrepreneurs in the offshore wind supply chain encounter financing challenges that delay or halt innovations and scale up projects? And the goals of the study were to identify and understand these financing bottlenecks, to propose strategic directions to improve the sector's access to finance. We did that for Invest-NL and TKI Offshore Energy. So if we can move to the next slide, we can quickly discuss the research setup. So we've mainly gone through the following phases. So we've started with the desk research and root cause analysis. Then we've done interviews, online questionnaire. Then later on, we did some deep dive interviews, and we then went on to conclusions and recommendations. In the bottom right, we can see that we've done approximately 20 interviews in total, of which 10 preliminary and 10 deep dive interviews, and we had approximately 15 questionnaire respondents. And in the bottom left, you can see the setup of the root cause analysis. So the left hypothesis was the starting point of the research. So the Dutch offshore wind supply chain is not financially robust and lacks sufficient capacity to achieve the cumulative European ambitions. And then we've broken that down into causes. So the main causes are divided into the financial capital causes and the industry causes. And then we've broken that down again into themes related to our identified issues. And these themes then move on to the root cause hypotheses. And that's how we've built up the analysis. And we've really gone levels deeper and deeper to see what really causes the problem. Okay, then we can move on to the next slide where we can show the main findings. So the main findings of the analysis highlight several key issues that hamper supply chain scaling up and innovations. So on the one side, we see that the business cases are under pressure. So on the supply side, we see a growing capex, increasing interest rates, inflation on building costs, challenging factor conditions. And on the demand side, we see increasingly uncertain returns. There is a very price-focused tender structure. The electricity prices have been quite volatile, and there is insufficient appetite for PPAs in the market. Then secondly, it's difficult for parties to create proof points. So we see that the new subsidy regime, they cause a financing gap. It's because some parts of the value chain are excluded in the current subsidy regime. Secondly, you see that innovation points are often on circularity, biodiversity, but not necessarily on innovation that enables scaling up of the supply chain. You can also see that innovators are dependent on the success of a tender bid. And it's often perceived to be too risky for innovative companies and wind farm operators to implement innovations at scale rather than just in a small part of the farm. Thirdly, there is low appetite by investors to finance innovation. So you can see that the risk-reward profile of many investors usually exceeds the risk appetite or the risk-reward profile of offshore wind innovations usually exceeds the risk appetite of investors. So, and the main reasons for that are that innovations can be seen as niche products, or they are often niche products because they're specifically linked for the offshore wind industry. And often investors have an opinion that they think that the business cases are too risky to fit their fund structures. And then there's high initial capex, and there's a long time to market for a lot of these innovations, which creates a long and deep valley of death. The average exit period of 5 to 7 years of investors does not fit with the dynamics of innovative companies in the offshore wind supply chain. And there's also competition with other investment opportunities in other climate tech or in other sectors, which often have a higher return or lower risk profile. Then fourthly, the financing landscape is not fully aligned with demand. We see in the Netherlands that the investor landscape is fragmented and it lacks qualified lead investors. We have a shortage of equity in ticket sizes between 5 to 10 million euros. And we also see that long-term infrastructure investments need to be matched with long-term financial capital. And traditional equity investors have shorter investment horizons. And there is a lack of infrastructure investors active across the entire supply chain. So there is a shortage of long-term capital available to the sector. And then lastly, there's also insufficient knowledge of the offshore wind sector and the dynamics and there are defensive investment strategies related to that. So then we, based on these findings, we can say there is a mismatch between the financing, the supply and demand, and that hinders innovations required to significantly scale up the supply chain. So we've really said that coordinated and simultaneous actions are required to enhance the access to finance. And it's on 3 pillars. It's based on 3 pillars. So I won't go into detail for all of these because we don't have the time for this. But I will highlight that the 3 main pillars are recommendations that are related to the impact on the company business case. And one example of that is de-risking the business case, for instance, by introducing guarantees to improve the risk profile. Secondly, the impact on the investor landscape. For instance, attracting patient money. So we want infrastructure and long-term investors to be further attracted to the sector, as many of the assets have long lifetimes, more than 15 years, and they can provide stable incomes. And also be a hedge for inflation, what long-term investors are also looking for. And then thirdly, impact on the offshore wind ecosystem. And one example is the 4th one, enabling innovation proof points. So this one is both related to the subsidy regime, which we've already covered. How we could, it would be nice if the scope of the DAI and MOI subsidies could be altered to better enable companies to create the much needed proof points. Moreover, we can develop a proof point facility where we can scale up innovations and not necessarily have them linked to one tender party, for instance. And we really recommend that that's a complex problem and you need to work on all the triangle parts simultaneously in order to make sure that the supply chain can be scaled up to reach the targets. And then if we go to the last slide, we really say that there are coordinated and simultaneous actions required. We advise to take the multiple actions, for instance, aligning with policymakers, setting up coordinated programs, organizing roundtables to bring parties together, create an action plan where you can execute a feasibility study on all the recommendations. And we also say that European cooperation needs to be simulated more. So this is the study in a nutshell. And obviously, you're welcome to contact us in case you want or read the report and in case you want more information. I'm always happy to give that.
Well, thank you, Eliane, for this excellent summary of a very comprehensive report. So thanks again for that. I also like to encourage the audience to raise questions in the Q&A so we can pick these up during the call or maybe afterwards. So now I would like to hand over to Jan Vos. Jan, could you give your reflections on what you've just heard about the study that was done?
Then second,
I think it's spot on. So 2ebinar Offshore Energy and Invest-NL, and also Eliane, you and your team, I think you've done a great job. What we see in general is that the business case for offshore wind is not going as well as it used to go. So the developers don't have any access funds to really invest in innovation. I think that comes clearly out of the study. And then there is a lively ecosystem provided by the 2ebinar Offshore Energy of startup companies, innovative companies that really have great ideas and also get to a preliminary PMC or like a baseline product. But then as soon as they need to scale up and really needs 5, 10, 20 or 30 million, they get into problems because the funding is just not there. Then obviously the offshore wind energy market is huge. If you look at it in a multi-decade time frame, and if you look at it for the European market, like in a 5-year time frame, there's some really great goals that have been set by politicians, by government leaders all over Europe after the Ukraine invasion of Russia. However, if you look at the total market size compared to the kind of investments that you need to make, then the risk is really high because there's quite a few Denmark, Germany, UK tenders that have not been going well. And if something like this happens to your innovative project, it can be the end of your venture. So there's just too many risks compared to the financial benefits. And I think the report addresses that well. And now the main question is, how do we build a solution for this?
Yeah, thanks for this, Jan. I completely concur what you say. So we do look at an enormous market potential, but the complexity of say introducing innovative products there is really difficult from this perspective. We have the first questions in the chat, and the first one comes from Bluebird Consultant. And the question is really, what are the actual actions proposed to make it more attractive for large investors with a longer horizon? And so where Eliane was referring to, say, the exit between 5 and 7 years, that may be difficult. So what are the actual actions that can be proposed? Eliane, could you respond to that?
Then second. So in order to attract a long-term capital, to the sector, it's already started, right? So the pension funds are already investing in some parts of the supply chain. So the actions that we propose are bringing parties together and making sure that they get educated on the topic, and also to make sure that parties work together to de-risk the business case as much as possible, and together discuss solutions for that. And part of it is risk perception, but also part of it is financing structures. And for instance, blending financing structure, or also blended finance is also one instrument that we recommend in the study. So also looking at sort of new ways of bringing capital into the offshore wind supply chain. And it's not just the parties that had the big utilities that respond to the tender bids, but it's the whole supply chain that needs to scale up. And bringing the pension funds and the infrastructure funds to the large projects is not really the problem. They're also co-investing in tenets platforms, but the difficulty is in the innovations and scaling up the innovations and the whole supply chain necessary to realize the targets. Yeah. And that's where we propose to bring parties together to discuss innovative new ways to bring capital into the market.
Yeah, and when you say, sorry.
If I could chip in here also, because from Invest-NL, these are definitely the things that we kind of pick up from this study. One of the key things is that we want to enhance the financial landscape, and that can be either by looking into like what can you do to create market conditions that create certain investment certainties. But if you more dive into the financial landscape, then the fragmentation is of concern, but also the gap and that companies cannot find the right say ticket sizes or type of funding, so the long-term capital. That is exactly where we're going to go look into, and for this we definitely need to continue to engage and have a dialogue to build the knowledge together, but also have a mutual understanding of these different challenges and then opportunities. So I also definitely want to share that we're going to organize an open event mid-April, and the details will be shared soon, so that we can discuss with the sector, but also with the investor landscape, what the challenges are and what the opportunities are to align it better, the financial landscape and the needs of the supply chain.
Yeah. And maybe to pick up on that, Eva, so Eliane mentioned blended finance. most likely combinations between equity, debt, but also subsidies. So what is your view on that from Invest-NL?
Then
Well,
second,
there are various things addressed in the report. So we have to look for each of these. What is the most best solution for this? And can we do that together with the investor landscape? Because we invest and also invest, but we cannot do it all. So definitely it's going to be a combination of public and private capital that's required for these big investments. I would rather keep the dialogue going on, and that we take each of these points in more depth the coming weeks with the sector and the investors.
Yeah, well, thank you. And another question in the Q&A from Koen Hermans, directed at Eliane, that you mentioned the DEI and MOI subsidy instruments, and that they may not be sufficient to support these proof points. And the remark here is, let me read this further, that a big focus on full-scale testing and demonstration would be made possible. Could you elaborate a bit, Eliane, on what kind of proof points need to be supported to overcome the long valley of death?
Then second. Well, what we see is that very often the innovations are linked to a specific tender bid, right? And that's a very high risk, because you can either win the bid or lose the bid. And it would be much more helpful if these innovators can first test their innovation at scale at some kind of proof point facility before coupling themselves to a tender bid and then either winning or losing. Because if you are if you have a really good innovation, but you are linked to the wrong tender bid, and then you're lost, basically.
Yeah, and so of course these say proof point facilities, that's very close to say the heart of TKI Offshore Energy. And already quite a long time ago, we also took the initiative to develop test and demonstration sites. One of the outcomes was the Borsele 5 site as well. There's also a question from Wouter Maas in the chat about this. So is your view that we should have more of these, say, Borsele 5 innovation sites?
Well, more, I can't say more, but it should definitely be reconsidered or considered to have this, to make sure that the innovations can become an integral part of the value chain or the supply chain, regardless of winning the tender bid, yes or no. So we definitely recommend to look into that, in more detail.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And definitely, so from say the TKI Offshore Energy perspective, as Jan already mentioned, so we really try to work hard on bringing the various parties together, but also say given your recommendations to start to look at creating these proof point facilities. And there may be some already available, and we have to start maybe cooperating with these also on an international scale. So another question on a completely different topic is about ports. Bert van der Lingen from NedZero raised this question. And there is a large demand for port capacity, and that also requires, I think, a lot of innovation also on the port and the port logistics side. Do you have any specific opinion about this?
Then second. Do you want me to answer, or?
Yeah, I'm really looking at you, Eliane, but I'm happy for anybody else also to answer, of course. So yes. Again, so the capital that needs to go into port facilities is, of course, for the very long term. This is not that you do for a one-off project.
Yes, very true. And I mean, the ports are also the places where the electricity lands, right, from the offshore wind parks, and possibly they can become sort of energy hubs. And now it's already difficult to organize enough power to to power the ships that are lying in ports. So there's definitely a transition, an energy transition for the ports upcoming as well. And it's also a question, what kind of role do they want to play in this offshore wind transition landscape, and maybe even e-fuels, etc., coupled to this. But they definitely can play an important role and will play an important role in the energy transition.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Eva, do you want to respond to that, or did I?
So we needed for this project to size the scope to make it manageable. But of course, the ports are even important as the whole supply chain. As well, what I wanted to make a note of is also the geographical scope that we considered. We focus mainly on the Dutch market, but we clearly understand it's an international context where it's all happening. And second, we're also very happy that we see that the European Commission is also taking the sector very serious with the EIB counter guarantee, for example, for companies that scale up and need to get these guarantees from the banks. So then these banks can get the counter guarantee of the EIB. And there are more things also that the EC is doing to help this sector. And I definitely also see more opportunities there. So for each, say, solution that we consider, we need to address whether it should be done on a national level or European level. And I'm also very much happy to see the movements that studies that's been doing on PPPAs. We ourselves are also having one study with the PPPAs that is definitely also where we see that will help the sector. Because you create certainties in offtake, and this can reduce again the cost of the wind farms because more loans can be secured. So this definitely from the investor landscape can definitely contribute to the success of the sector, and that's where we want to exactly be. And I actually really want to thank all the people that already contributed to the project, but also want to give a call to that we keep the dialogue, and also feel free to contact us anytime.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe also on that note, you mentioned the international scope that is important as well. And basically there are two questions that I briefly would like to touch on. Is about what can we learn from China, and should these innovations be more steered and subsidized in the same way as offshore wind? Questions from Nina from Echt and Juan Frios. So I'm not sure who wants to answer that. So if we can learn from China and put more steer maybe on how we develop these innovations. Maybe Jan, you would like to reflect on that.
Yeah, sure. China obviously has scale, and what we lack in the Netherlands is scale. So we are the 5th largest economy of Europe, but we're still too small to really tackle this financing issue. So if you need like 30 million for one company as an initial investment, then you probably want to reserve another at least 30 million for follow-up investments, but probably more like 60. So you need like 100 million as an investor per company. So you need 1 billion in order to get 10 companies. From a venture perspective, that's like what you need at least. So this is too small for the balance sheet of Invest-NL. It's too small for the ROMs. It's so even if we combine the ROMs, Invest-NL, maybe even the DFI, FMO, and Invest International, we still don't have the money to really invest in this sector at scale. So if you look at China, they can invest at scale because it's just a way the market is just way larger, and also they are more used to centralized investment thinking. So we really have too many small players in the market. Although they look big maybe from the outside to some of us, and we need to bring them together. So I love what everyone was saying about the EIB. The EIB is doing 5 billion, but they're doing it in a risk-averse manner. So they finance the banks, and then the banks need to, and the banks basically come in when the project is already there. It's just, they will never go for an FID that's not solid. So we really, sorry?
No, so I was basically listening to your remarks. So go ahead. Yeah.
I love to talk and see people.
We are close to the end of the.
Okay, I'll wrap it up. So I think the EIB, following Eva's lead here, really needs to have the mandate to invest more like a private equity or even venture capital type party. They don't have that mandate right now. And we really need to get our act together as the Netherlands. We're the 5th largest economy. We should bundle our strength on the different investment companies and then take it to the European level, because this is a worldwide market that will develop in the next decades. We want to be there.
Well, thank you for these last remarks, because we have to close the webinar. If there are any remaining questions that we didn't cover, we will come back to you in a Q&A form. I really like to thank very much the participants. So Jan, Eliane, Eva, thanks very much for participating in this webinar. I also like to thank our audience for staying with us so long, and your attendance to this webinar. Before we go, just two advertisements for further webinars and events from TKI Offshore Energy. On the 25th of March, we have a webinar about vulnerability of the offshore wind supply chain together with Secura. So the 25th of March it is, and on the 28th of March we have our matchmaking events for the ECO and MOI subsidy instruments. So despite the fact that there may be some improvements there possible, they are available, and we see that there are big opportunities for innovative companies to work with these instruments. You can find more information in the chat and also on our website. So thank you for staying with us 2 minutes over 9, and I hope to see you again in one of our next events.